The Ukraine crisis has another unintended victim, the global energy supply.
The sector has barely recovered from the impact of the pandemic. Crude oil prices hit a record $99 a barrel on Tuesday, the highest in more than 7 years.
Dr. Thomas W. O'Donnell is an energy analyst with the Hertie School of Governance, and he joins us from Berlin. Great to have you with us on the programme today. So, firstly, Germany has stopped the approval of the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. There are huge implications economically and for supply, aren't there?
Yes, there are. There were 5 European companies that invested half the money for this pipeline, which was a very controversial thing for them to do. And, you know, that's half of about $11 billion. The other half, of course, was Gazprom. So that's, you know, that's a loss for them. This pipeline, I would venture to say this pipeline will never come online. The fact that it wasn't online already was a victory for all the countries in Europe and the United States who fought very hard to prevent it from coming online as a diversion pipeline for Putin to avoid having to send his gas across Ukraine.
So you think there's no future for Nord Stream 2?
I'd say it's very, very unlikely. I don't think Putin's going to reverse course. This has already been called an invasion, and the President of the United States made it clear, if there's an invasion, there will be no pipeline. So the Germans, rightfully, have taken the first step since they were the partners with Putin in this, with Gazprom in this, and they've suspended the consideration of the pipeline. The pipeline will not go forward for now. But I think it'll become, Mr. Putin is not going to stop, and the United States President, Congress, and so forth, and the European Union perhaps also will put sanctions. So a good chance this will never go online. Putin has sacrificed it.
So even without Nord Stream 2, though, Russia's the largest supplier of natural gas and oil to the EU last year. So if Russia's supplies aren't available, who or what could fill the gap?
Well, no, this is a pipeline that wasn't online yet, okay? So there are 2 other pipelines that are currently sending gas from Russia to Europe. Now, what Russia has done is is only supplied for several months now gas that was long-term contracts. Normally in the spot market, it provides extra gas to fill the reserves in Europe, and it refused to do that. Those reserves are the lowest of natural gas than they've been in a long, long time. So they're in a precarious situation if Russia cuts off this other gas that is still sending. So what makes up for that? Actually, in the month of January, for most of January, American LNG supplied more gas to Europe, several times more than Russian gas by pipeline, unheard of. The price was very high, gas was diverted from Asia, and it came. Qatar has agreed to do everything they can, the next biggest producer, to send LNG. But if Putin cuts off the 2 big pipelines that still supply gas to Europe, it will not be possible for those LNG ships to replace that. There'll be an energy crisis in Europe. Yes.
So an energy crisis, you say. What do you think could fill that gap? Obviously, people will still need gas. How will they get it?
Well, at a certain point, you don't get it, right? This was, let's just say it, a mistake that Europe, and in particular Germany, made for overdependence on Russian gas. They were warned by this from the Americans going back to the Reagan administration when the first pipelines were built. France and Germany promised Mr. Reagan they would be no more than 15% dependent on Russia, and of course that increased over the years, building newer and more pipelines. The Americans warned them, and various other European countries, the Poles and others, warned Europe that this is the situation you get in, and that's the situation they're in. If those pipelines are cut off by Mr. Putin as part of a war, anything can happen in a war, there'll be an energy crisis, there won't be enough gas, and people have to decide how to ration gas. And the European Commission has looked into ways of doing this.
I also want to ask you about oil prices, because there's already been a huge effect on those due to this crisis. They're very high now. How high could they go?
Okay. Russia, of course, Mr. Putin back in March, April of 2020 launched an oil price war to try and, well, he launched an oil price war as a means of hitting American shale, fracking oil, thinking that if he could get them bankrupt over some years, America wouldn't be able to put sanctions on Russia anymore. This was a complete misunderstanding of how bankruptcy law works and how the oil system works. And within a few days, he was actually calling President Trump to help him get the prince in Saudi Arabia on the phone to end the war that he started. So here we are again. This time, as people are being cured of COVID, as the pandemic is decreasing, production is increasing, and we need more oil. We need more oil. OPEC has been steadily increasing their oil on the market. The problem is a number of OPEC producers have not been able to meet their increased quota. So now, if Putin cuts back the oil he's sending to Europe, the price will skyrocket. The Americans will do all they can to produce more. Many countries will. But with the world economy likely taking off, okay, if he cuts back that oil, the price could, as you say, skyrocket. However, here, unlike natural gas, the OECD countries, the first world countries essentially, have a treaty agreement, the strategic petroleum reserves. Every country since the OPEC oil price, the OPEC crisis in the 1970s, has 90 days of supplies of its total imports underground. So the odds for a big crisis, a high price, yes, are different. They probably won't run out of oil because those strategic reserves will be brought online. Europe did not make a strategic reserve for natural gas, as myself and other experts have called for them to do for some time.
Okay, Dr. Thomas W. O'Donnell from Hertie School of Governance. Great to get your thoughts today. Thanks for joining us on the programme.
Great to be here. Bye-bye.